In this video, we'll give you 10 sneaky starts for week 8 of the fantasy football season. We're Jim Coventry and Anthony Cervino of RotoWire. At quarterback, all right, low-hanging fruit. Most of his season hasn't been great, but Kirk Cousins is playing the Bucs. And he's not getting 505 again, which he did the last time. But Tampa Bay, Jamel Dean's on the injured reserve. Tampa gives up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Even Spencer Rattler. He went for 243 and a touchdown against his defense. Not just Jamel Dean out, but even one of their their fourth best corner, Bryce Hall, is on injured reserve. So this is a team, they blitz, yes, but Cousins has already seen that blitz. And so they already know how to handle that. There's not much more Tampa can do. Tampa's decent enough against the run that it will be more likely Cousins throws. And that said, count on at least 2 touchdowns, count on 280, maybe hits that 300-yard game, but this should be a high floor game for him. And there is potential for big ceiling as well. Anthony, who do you like at quarterback?
I like Bo Nix, and talk about a sneaky start. He's given us 3 games over 21 fantasy points. That 21 fantasy point game came in week 3 against the Buccaneers, his easiest matchup. He's had a lot of hard matchups. His other 2 matchups where he had over 24 and 25 fantasy points, Las Vegas and the Chargers, and on paper, they're pretty good against quarterbacks. Now he gets the Carolina Panthers. This is the second easiest matchup he'll face all year. What I like about Bo Nix, he needs a lot of work throwing the football, but in the past 2 games, Bo Nix, the runner, has given us 61 and 75 yards on the ground, which raises his rushing floor. And the Carolina Panthers, this is not a good team. This is a team, if you listen to the broadcast the other day, full of undrafted free agents on the defensive side of the ball. At least that's the way they pitched it on the national broadcast. Marcus Mariota put up 21.7 fantasy points against Washington. They have a high-octane offense, but Marcus Mariota has no business dropping 21 fantasy points on anybody. I think there's enough here for Bo Nix to have one of his more productive fantasy outings. If you're in a bind at quarterback, I really like Bo Nix this week.
At running back, I'm going to focus on that same game. I'm going with Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos against that same Panthers defense. So Williams has had 3 easy matchups over the last 4 games. In those games, he's had 17 or 18 touches. Last week, he finally found the end zone twice. But his yardage in those 3 games, 80, and then a pair of 111 scrimmage yard games. Javonte Williams is getting better each week, very good at evading tackles, but Carolina allows the most fantasy points in the league to opposing running backs. Running backs actually score 2 touchdowns per game against them. There are 7 running backs against Carolina that have gone for at least 71 rushing yards. That's 7 in 7 games. It's not a bad track record. Last week, Denver got their right tackle, Mike McGlinchey, back, was a very, very good run blocker. They acquired him in 2023 in free agency. This is a game the Broncos likely have a lead. They can lean on Javonte Williams. Audric Esime lost a soft fumble last week, so that might hurt his opportunity to really cut into the workload. But Williams is playing well. Ride him in easy matchups because this is as good as it gets. Anthony, who do you like at running back?
At running back, I'm going to go with Raheem Mostert. Tua is expected back. And with Tua back, this Miami Dolphins offense should all click. And when it all clicks, there is room for this backfield, both Mostert and Devin Achane, to produce in fantasy. On paper, the Arizona Cardinals, they look better than they actually are. Like defensively, in their past 3 games, they have not allowed a running back to score more than 12 PPR points on them. And they played Mason, the Packers, Dobbins. This Miami Dolphins offense, they're going to be throwing everything at Arizona's defense. And if they get this passing game going, and Arizona's worst part of their defense is in their secondary, I can see a world where Raheem Mostert gets going on the ground. And if Miami gets a lead, and they should, in theory, have a lead, 46.5 point total, a lot of points expected in this one, then Raheem Mostert should see some goal line opportunities and possibly even opportunities in a 4-minute drill, as I expect Miami to come out with a win.
I would love Miami to put a 70 up like they did against Denver last year. It'd be kind of fun to watch. If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings. You can get a free 2-day trial, no credit card needed. Head on over to rotowire.com/Jim. You can check out all of our content. At wide receiver, going to go to Darnell Mooney of the Falcons against the Buccaneers. I went with Cousins. Now the sneaky starts Mooney. Now Mooney in 3 of his last 4 games has been held to about 40 yards in each of those games. But remember, when he played the Bucs, 9 catches, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he dropped a pass that would have been a long touchdown as well. Is he going to put up that level of numbers? Maybe not, because like I said, Cousins isn't throwing for 500 again. But that said, the Buccaneers have literally nobody left to cover. I said earlier, Jamel Dean's out. They're going to have to roll cover to Drake London. Mooney is the player they're going to put less attention on. Mooney is very explosive. He is the wide receiver 26 in PPR points per game as it is. So he's undervalued as it is. Again, I said the Bucs probably are a little better against the run, and I think it's going to motivate the passing game. So, yep, Darnell Mooney is definitely in your lineups. Anthony, who do you like at wide receiver?
I'm going to go with Jalen McMillan, and we know why I'm going with Jalen McMillan. Chris Godwin done for the year. We're expecting Mike Evans at least 3 weeks. That's the early reports on him, and I believe Jalen McMillan steps into that prominent wide receiver 1 role. I do think Trey Palmer is in play in deeper leagues, but Palmer, while he outsnapped McMillan on Monday night, McMillan did receive 8 targets, only caught 3 for 15. He even received a 1 carry for 11 yards. I like this matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. I think Atlanta's secondary is a little bit overhyped. I love their front 7, but in the secondary, if you look at wide receiver 1s that they faced, Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans in their past 3 games, all went over 19.9 fantasy points. Devonta Smith back in week 2 with A.J. Brown out. He popped. Rashee Rice popped. And even Chris Olave had his most productive game in this matchup. So there's production to be had. I believe Jalen McMillan is going to be the one moving forward while Evans is out. And I think he is a slam dunk this week against Atlanta.
At tight end, I like Jatavian Sanders of the Carolina Panthers against the Denver Broncos. A lot of action in that game. Sanders is on only the tight end 30 on a points per game basis. But in the last 3 games, Sanders has perked up. He has a total of 18 targets. Last week, 6 for 61. 2 weeks prior, 5 for 49. Those are useful box scores. And Denver probably plays with a lead here. Denver brings a big pass rush. And what does a quarterback have to do as a pass rush? They've got to get it to a hot read. Well, Sanders has been very available in the middle of the field. He could continue to see that 6 or 7 targets like you saw in the last couple of weeks. So if you're really in a pinch at tight end, you definitely can take a look at Jatavian Sanders. And at least 4 tight ends this season have put up 38 yards or more against Denver. Denver's middle of the road against tight ends. But like I said, this is a great opportunity if you're really scratching for a tight end. Anthony, who do you like at tight end?
Yeah, at the tight end position, I'm going to go with a real sneaky one. Noah Fant. And Fant, in back-to-back games, he's gone over 10.5 PPR points. He's also seen a total of 10 targets in the past 2 games. DK Metcalf, we know he's dealing with the lower body injury. And, you could play the game. Oh, it's going to be JSN. Maybe it's Bobo. Maybe it's Lockett. I do see a world against Buffalo, middle of the pack against tight ends, where Noah Fant sees enough targets to give us another productive fantasy outing. He's given us 3 games over double-digit fantasy points this year. All 3 of them, he's gone over 60 yards receiving.
My wild card pick for the week is Sterling Shepard of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Atlanta Falcons. My expectation is that Shepard moves into the slot role. Each of the 3 receivers, when they were on the field that are left, McMillan, Palmer, Shepard, had played about 30% slot. But with Chris Godwin out for the season, and obviously Mike Evans out, with Godwin out of that slot role, Sterling Shepard is the most natural fit. I know Trey Palmer was a slot receiver for them last year, but Sterling Shepard, injuries have derailed his career. But when he is on the field, Sterling Shepard has always been an excellent NFL wide receiver. And remember, Shepard played in college with Baker Mayfield. They do have a rapport. They have worked together. And Shepard has played at least 65% of the snaps in 3 of the last 4 games. So he'll be on the field. He's healthy, and that's the biggest deal. Shepard, if he does play in the slot, he will avoid A.J. Terrell. It's the only corner we really worry about with Atlanta, and he'll avoid that. And we saw last week, Atlanta's going to start to try to send some pressure to rattle the opposing quarterback. They hadn't been doing that much this year. And if any pressure comes, I say this all the time, who's the outlet? Middle of the field. That's Sterling Shepard. So that said, I'm expecting 6 to 8 targets. The Falcons give the 12th most fantasy points in PPR leagues to wide receivers. I do think Sterling Shepard's a great play this week. Anthony, who's your wild card?
My wild card is Troy Franklin. I like Bo Nix this week against Carolina. I think Troy Franklin can get going. I don't know what's going on with Cortland Sutton. Maybe they're going to move off of him, but he's been really invisible this year. And Troy Franklin in the past 2 games starting to come along. He has that collegiate rapport with Bo Nix. And in back-to-back games, we've seen Troy Franklin either score a touchdown or go for 5 receptions, 50 yards. He has a season-high 6 targets last week and played 29 snaps, which was the second most of any Denver Broncos wide receiver next to Sutton. And Carolina, this team has not played well defensively at any level. So if you need a really, really deep play at wideout in PPR, Troy Franklin's your guy.